Jawad, Prerna for coming in. And of course, my complaining will start after this. But first, we'll wait for Mr. Panchu to wish you, Jawad, or can we wish you a happy anniversary? But you look, you have loss of words
As
right
you
now.
wish, Vikram, as you wish. Since you have decided to put me through this, I resign myself to my feet. So,
Look, I
You
thought you'll call
deserve the best wishes. Definitely, you deserve the
You should ask her to peep in for a second.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, tell her that she can say hi to us and we can wish her also.
yeah, I'll just call her because she's right now with somebody. So, I'll
Okay,
just
but
call.
look, the thing is, someone told me that because I start my shows without introducing what is happening because I feel on YouTube and all you get a description. But
Correct.
someone told me that you should at least tell us what is happening here, what are we doing. So just a brief thing. Let me put this poster up that this is what we are discussing: the World Mediators Conference, and of course, 18th May to 30th June, the inaugural, of course, YouTube. The link is on my schedule. The schedule you can find on my post. All YouTube links are there. So please connect, watch them. There are social media posts there. Please share them. Sharing is a good thing. I don't know, three of you, any of you. I think Jawad shares. I think Jawad
I
shared them,
want
but
to share, Vikram.
yeah, but Prerna and Umaji don't share anything.
I'm very
That's,
bad at it.
I think we'll have one class only on how to share in life and my posts. So, but I tell you what, of course, after Mr. Panchu comes in, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? So, Umaji, please, just a little bit, as much as you want to tell us.
Um, of course, my name is Uma Ramanathan, and I started practicing as a lawyer in 1980, but came into mediation along with Jawad. We were trained together in 2006 and 2007 as a trainer. Of course, you don't like the word trainer, but then we got trained, and after that, mediation just captured my whole attention after that. And luckily for me, from 2009, I was able to give up my practice and focus more on mediation. And of course, I have been a voracious reader earlier too, but then when I started doing mediation, I realized I must understand behavior. And so I started reading more on psychology, and that led to looking into philosophy, Indian philosophy too. And all the notes that I gathered on the way, which I used for training. Bharat Chakravarti, who is now one of our judges in the High Court Madras, said, "Why are you having these bits of papers? Why don't you put it together as a book?" And then I got around to doing that one day finally, and that book is called Resolve to Resolve. It's not strictly mediation, but it's about thinking processes and how thinking has to be regulated, that kind of a thing. And even yesterday, when we were doing a training online, we realized, of course, online training has become a totally different kettle of fish. But then, even as we do every training, I find that I get something to share, or I learn something from each participant, and that's why mediation is very interesting for me. And I think that's the long and short of what I am.
But tell me, you have one question. You have to give us an answer. Are you here or not?
Where I was
Just
in
please.
Kodaikanal.
Okay, you're not here. Okay,
Now
so
I missed it.
we'll just feel happy that you are there, so we are also there. I thought we'll feel happy, but you're also not there, so we can't. So,
I was
okay, so
there. I came back because I had to go for a wedding to Bangalore, and I went there and came back.
the question is, why would you come back?
I know.
Keep it online. You guys have a nice place to go to. We all of us don't have that option. So, why? So, Prerna, please. Prerna, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? She seems to be a little frozen. So, Jawad, please.
I think Prerna's video is frozen. I
Yeah.
don't know if her connection is
He's frozen or not, we don't know. But video is definitely frozen.
So I think about myself, I have said quite a lot on your shows, Vikram, but just for the audience that might be perhaps signing in for the first time, my name is AJ Jawad. So I'm just borrowing the words of an Irish mediator whom I met in Belfast, who said that after worshipping at the satanic altar of litigation for 25 years, I converted to the true church of mediation for 16 years. So that is my background. So when he said that, it sort of, reflected actually what happened to us. I think Uma also is in the same boat. as me. So we all we both converted to the true Church of Mediation together. And from that time, there has been no looking back for either of us, and we have been on this journey together. We have done some training programs together. We have done mediations together. So it's been quite an interesting journey, and it's been quite an evolution for definitely for me. I don't know, Uma was already an evolved person from the beginning, but for me, it was definitely an evolution. As a person, also, I think I did change substantially. And the fact that Anu also happens to be a mediator made things quite easy for both of us to, get through the trials and tribulations of married life. And we have completed 34 years today. So I'm just preempting you from wishing me by announcing that we got married about 34 years back on this day. And it's been quite a journey together, and it's been a good life. I'm blessed. I'm very happy. I have friends like all of you, and that's about me. That's it.
Okay, but of course, you both of you have been on my show, but let me also say her name is Anis. He calls her Anu. Very nice. Hi, Anis.
Good morning.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you so much.
Brenda also wants to wish you.
Hi, Brenda.
She has some audio issue, it seems.
She has some audio issues.
Yeah. So, Anis, please join us. The only thing, Jawad, there is some kind of a disturbance when you speak. There's some little disturbance which happens. I don't know what that is.
Is it on my side?
Yeah, now it's okay. Seems better now. Yeah, there was something when you were speaking. But
okay.
Perfect. So, Anis, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. What is it that, okay, you might overshadow Jawad, but doesn't matter. You have to, mediation world needs you. Umaji doesn't know the background. Umaji, the background is that both of them were on my show earlier. And of course, I was saying that she should come on other things. There was a symposium happening, but she said, no, let the highlight be on Jawad. I don't want to be part of that. Okay, I might be putting some words there, but so I said, no, she also has to be part of what activities that I do. So please, Anis, please join us.
Yes, I will, Vikram, definitely.
Because the schedule of the conference is out there. Any topic that you want to drop in, please drop in. Zoom link is the same. Jawad has a Zoom link.
Okay.
And it's not that you have to be for the entire session. You can come in, whatever, give your inputs on something. So please.
Yes. Surely.
She saw this movie Abhiman and decided that she will not sort of overshadow me. I think.
Exactly.
Nothing of that sort. Okay.
I thought, Jawad, to reflect all the power from her.
No doubt about it.
The only thing is like, Umaji, let me say, I keep repeating it every time I meet Jawad. I said, Jawad, you have so much to contribute to the mediation world, but the negativity around in the world, he seeps it all in, and he wants to answer everyone. And I told him in that session also that you don't wrestle with a pig. He'll drag you in the mud, and the pig will be happy, but you'll get dirty. I keep telling him that. How do I get it, Umaji? Please, how do we explain to him that he has to? I cut off from the news, Jawad. I cut off for about 2.
It's an inane sense of injustice and righteousness in him that makes him say that now I have to open my mouth, and I had discussions with him also on that. So some things are better left unsaid, or better to have its own course.
No, in this sense.
He's the person who needs to set things right. So it's difficult.
No, what I'm saying is that, look, all of us are like that. We all want to fight injustice. The only thing is that if you get dragged in by people into those conversations, all the positive things that you need to do, you miss out on that. So of course, I told him you have to have your YouTube channel and all, but he's being slow on that. So that word of yours has to go out on a public level, Jawad. There is a larger audience, because there is so many good things that you have to say, but this gets missed out in the whole little battle with certain people. I don't know. Yeah, Jawad.
No, Vikram, it's like this. Okay, see, I'm not doing anything that is against the concept of mediation, because see, as mediators, we are dealing day in and day out with quite a lot of negativity from the party side, from the council, from so many sources that negativity comes, and we learn to handle it. Okay. Now, as a mediator,
Hi, Anis, how are you? Hi, Prerna, how are you?
Hello.
I think
There
she
is
has.
there's some
Hello.
audio. There's some audio issue. Let me call her up on the on WhatsApp and tell her about it. She doesn't know that. I think she thinks that is on my end.
Can you hear us, Prerna? I think she has.
She has an audio issue. Prerna, we can hear you. We can hear you, Prerna. There's an audio issue on the phone also. Or maybe I'll tell you what you do on the bottom, that on the mic thing, just press that up arrow there and just connect to the right mic. Maybe you haven't connected to the right mic there.
No, she will have to check her audio output also.
Yeah.
Source for audio.
No, what I'm saying, look, what happens, Jawad, even
Let me just complete it.
yeah,
Let
please.
me just complete it. See, what I'm saying is, as mediators, are we above society? Are we above the problems that face society? Are we immune to anything that happens in society? Are we not human?
No, I'll tell you.
Should we not? No, no. My question is,
please.
when we talk of empathy, for instance, empathy comes only when I can feel what the other person is feeling. Correct? So when that is the role of a mediator in a conflict that has nothing to do with the mediator, now when there is something that the mediator herself or himself feels strongly about, should the mediator not be able to express that? Should we not have a discussion on that? See, all I try to do is have a discussion, okay, have a debate. So all I'm saying is I'm inviting people. Yes, you have a point of view. Let's discuss it. There's nothing wrong in the discussion. Okay. So you are free to hold your point of view. Let me express my point of view. You express it in a way, I express it in a way. Let's try to reach a point where we agree to disagree. That's all right. Perfectly all right. I'm not disputing your right to hold a particular view. Now, insofar as the political issues or the social issues or issues which have I don't think it's in my.
It is. It's on your end. It's on your end. Because when Umaji speaks, it's all right. It's when you, I mean, so it's somewhere there.
Yeah, I think somewhere I don't know what to do about that because.
So sometimes he's sort of
But
wording.
the only problem is if I use my headphones, Anu won't be able to hear this. So,
yeah, that's
a problem.
But Prerna, are you with us? Are you with us?
Yes, I think now I'm like kind of able.
Oh, perfect. So now you can wish Anis. Anis has obviously heard you, but you haven't heard her, what she said in reply.
So it's so wonderful to see her, and I'm seeing her after such a long time. Waiting to see her in person, actually.
Yeah. So when you're coming to Chennai then?
I really hope so. So do we see you on the 4th? They're having one session on the 4th in Delhi by EMW.
EMW.
I'm not coming to Delhi this time. Maybe next time.
Oh, okay. I'll look forward.
So I think what you should do, Prerna, is you can tell them that what they can do is they can have a screen and let people join in the Zoom meeting also. So that can be put there and everyone can join in. They can watch also, they can contribute also, because look, hybrid has to be done. I am saying should be only online, but I think some people like to meet on physical space. So I think that hybrid, maybe you can tell them. I mean, I'll also send a message out.
I think they're doing it. They mentioned that they would be most probably going hybrid in that event.
Yeah, that'll be nice. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
But I was there was an important thing that Jawad was talking about. So I was just want to say. Yeah, no, basically, let me tell you, Prerna, give her the background. The thing is that you wouldn't hear this because Jawad, whenever I have a conversation with him, I've always been telling him that all that negativity in the world that he takes in and seeps it in and then wants to answer all those people, all the tweets, all those messages all over the world, he wants to answer. And I said, look, I mean, there is a whole saying that don't wrestle with a pig. He'll drag you into the mud. You'll get dirty and the pig will enjoy it. I'm not saying it exactly in the way it's put out, but that's the whole gist. So I was trying to keep him away from that. So he's saying, look, as mediators, he's talking about the mediator thing, which I will obviously answer. But I thought about it, Jawad. What I was thinking was, what we'll do is all these issues, what we can do is, let's not call it mediation, but let's have a session where people with all their views can come in and let's mediate, but not really mediate, but we are not really going to, they are not the ones who can say, let's do that.
We can have a simple dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. A nice one with the one that we are not getting agitated or anything. We're taking points of view and we just have trying to see whether there is a meeting point. And we are not, look, we are not deciding the whole thing and they can't decide it also because obviously there are many more stakeholders. But at least that's why I'm not saying mediation, because mediation will think that, oh, we are the ones helping them settle it. We won't do that. But I actually thought about it and I'm putting it out. And all people like Uma ji and you and Prerna and Mr. Panchu, we can all be part of that whole process and let's bring in people. I mean, let's not keep it as something which everyone puts a tweet out and the other one puts a reply and the other one puts something and the whole newspaper has a vested interest. They put in something and it just that fuel in the fire they keep putting. So Mr. Panchu is here.
For me, the highlight is that Jawad Bhai is very encouraging, and I think that's a phenomenal quality he has. So for me, I mean, that is something I'd really like, to state over here, since we're all sitting together. It means a lot. He's very encouraging.
Yeah, because Mr. Panchu said he'll join in 5 minutes. He's here, but he's not here. But that's what I'm saying. Prerna, you did not hear me. I said Jawad has so much to offer to the mediation world, but because he's dragged into that aspect of it, those positive things that he has to contribute are not coming out. I'm sure it's coming out in some little way somewhere, lots of ways, I'm sure, but there's so much more. He'll have a YouTube channel, he'll be having conversations and he'll be doing that. I was telling him last time, but it's been almost at least 9 months or whatever. Babies come out in 9 months, yeah, Jawad. One YouTube channel, YouTube channel should be out there by now. So that's what it is. But Ajay, what we can do is we can just start on a preliminary basis, of course, when he comes in. But the whole concept of
already, I think.
Yeah. He just sent a chat message that he'll join in 5 minutes. So maybe he just put it on. So just a little introduction, maybe, because obviously the background of what mediation currently is, because largely it's in the court system and you people are part of that and I'm not. So maybe a little overview as to what's happening. Of course, Mr. Panchu can talk about, he's already spoken about his starting the first center, but he can come in there. So Umaji, just a little overview of what's happened and what's happening on mediation in India right now. Umaji?
I'm sorry, Vikram, can I leave, please? I just have some...
Anish, you also have to contribute so much to the mediation world.
Yeah, of course I will. But right now I'm just caught up in a little work. So if you please excuse me.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
All of you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye. Pleasure seeing you and speaking to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Umaji, you'll have to unmute yourself and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, see, when mediation first started in 2005, especially in Madras High Court, the call was because Justice A.P. Shah was here, Justice Markandeya Kadju was there. All of them gave total fillip to it, gave some places in the court and to start the center and all that. But the initial training was done mainly for senior counsels and government advocates. And then in the second batch, of course, all of us got trained. We got to know that there is something interesting and then we joined in. So that's how mediation started from Madras High Court at least. But you know what I found was, because it was completely controlled by the High Court. I can only talk about the Madras High Court, I can't talk about other places. But we have had chance, Jawad and I have had chance to go to Kerala mainly for training. And we've gone to other places. So what we have gathered from others, maybe I'll be able to say a few things. But in Madras High Court, what I found was, initially because the government was also not funding, the High Court didn't have enough space, except for giving, posting a person as the registrar and then giving 2 rooms. There wasn't much done. And because they got this trainer from US and this training was done free. What they felt was, once we've given you this training, you are bound to our court. You have to do the work for us. And, any attempt, even when Mr. Sriram Panchu started his own center, I think there were some grumblings about how he can start a center. Very much later, when we started FCDR, they said, how can you start a center? Of course, we had qualms because in Coimbatore especially, there were people roaming around in cars with red lights saying they are mediators and arbitrators and passing awards and all that. So we also had our own qualms about training and doing private mediation. Jawad, I, Chitra, and all started it together. But then, we found that yeah, that's more than 7, 8 years now. Still, people are hesitant to approach private mediation, either because the lawyers don't encourage, or because they still feel going to court and getting a stamp, a red seal on that makes it more authentic or believable, in the sense that they think it will be workable for them. And so, in spite of all these years that we have practiced, what we have found is in the High Court, it's mostly matrimonial matters. Now, of course, because of the Commercial Courts Act and MSME and all that, some sort of encouragement is being given for other matters to come in. But generally, it is the matrimonial matters, and that too criminal matters, either domestic violence or dowry and all that. So, what the court thinks is that we are flooded with all this work. Now, why don't you take it off our board? Why don't you see that once we refer, it must get away from there? So, that's the kind of
Hi, Vikram.
Hello, Mr. Manchu. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
How are you? Hi, Uma.
Good afternoon, sir.
So you're finally with us. You're finally with us. Mr. Panju,
I'm always with you.
how are we going to look at mediation Vision 2026 if you are not going to give time to the mediation world and of course mediation in India? Jawad definitely is not giving it, but you have to be out there.
I think it's some cheek for someone to say, I don't give time to the mediation world.
You didn't come yesterday. You didn't come yesterday for that. It was a very important session. The
I've been
session
doing it for the last 30 years. Anyway.
because the topic there she was a judge. She was a judge in the US, and so I wanted her to be, of course, you also to interact on that, because mediation in the court system, boon or bane, is what we were discussing, and I really thought that your view on that would have also been interesting. So that's why I'm saying mediation world, you are not contributing the way I would want you to contribute. So what we did, Mr. Manchu, was one introduction that everyone did. Your introduction, is it required or not? I don't know. But if you just want to tell us about yourself. I mean, I keep putting it out, but please.
Practicing lawyer for 46 years. Senior advocate from 96. In mediation from 1991. Helped to set up India's first center in Madras High Court in 2005, and then helped other high courts. Worked with government and judges. Mediated some significant public disputes. Written about 3 books on mediation. And yeah, I think that's
yeah. And main thing is Mr. Panchu has been on Evolution of a Mediator. Both those parts are on the YouTube channel. You can find out more about him. So let's keep it on that, because there's so much to find out about him. So what we were doing is that just before we start on the vision, maybe an overview of what is currently happening or what has happened. So Uma, you give us a little bit of a background. So, but if you want to also just an overview, and then we take it from there.
See, I think we are at an interesting stage now. I think stage 1 was really bringing mediation into the system. And in a country like India, I think it could only be done if you moved it through the courts. That stage has happened. We now have come at a stage where we go well beyond the courts and without the courts. And that is to move it to professional mediation, encompass community mediation, transnational mediation, and focus on how you create an environment for mediation where you don't have to go access the courts or be dependent on the courts or judges. This is now, clearly on its own an independent trajectory. And I think we should be careful how to draw the line between where the court and judges come and where they don't. They're good for certain things, but if that line gets crossed, then we have problems. And I think already we're starting to have some problems. This is not the forum to address it, but we should be clear that mediation is a professional activity for mediators, and we should be clear about party autonomy and the right of parties to choose their neutral. These 2 things should be respected at all times and can't give way. But once we create that environment and we have structures, mediation service providers, institutes, plus also the right of parties to choose whoever they want to mediate their dispute. You can't take away that.
but provide it and provide ethics, provide code of functioning, a council which hopefully will aid and not hinder, and open the field out for mediation as much as possible. And then I think we are clearly on, the track 2. We are on the second stage, the booster stage. But this is not enough. It is not enough to have an act, however well you draft it. Now I think it needs a lot of work, because if we don't have the capacity, there's no point having an act. Cases will come to mediation. Either there won't be enough mediators, or there won't be enough good mediators. And then we can say goodbye to this whole thing. So now I think the challenge is to create enough good mediators. So far it was, there was no demand, and there was only supply outstripping demand. But I think soon we'll come to a stage where, your supply will not meet the demand. So the challenge is to create, good mediators, good practices. As the numbers grow, you will have aberrations. And we must, crack down on aberrations. We must maintain a court, because if we lose trust, then again, we have lost it. So I think there's a lot of work. Plus, people have to be educated. Industry has to know. Law firms have to know. Other sectors, people have to know. So whether it's, speaking at Rotary Club meetings, or addressing schools, or talking to associations, or community leaders, the word about mediation has to spread. The Act will make it available legally, but the word has to spread. So in terms of spreading the word, and in terms of ensuring that we have enough good mediators, that is a big challenge for the community. I think that we should tell ourselves that in 10 years' time, half of India's civil, personal, commercial litigation should get onto mediation tables. And if we can go, anywhere near that, then I think we bear a huge difference to the system. And perhaps the system's only chance is survival. Yes.
Because Mr. Baju, you said half of the civil matters. So I think we should put a figure to it, because just to be able to discuss it properly. So how many do you think would be the civil cases in India? Any idea? Because I'll tell you how I was calculating it. I was calculating it on the basis of 18 million go into courts. Out of that, I would say, let's just take it at 30%. I'm not saying take it more than that. So 30% of that number, if you're saying 5.4 million, if those are going into mediation every year, then what is the scale that we are looking at in terms of numbers? Because then we'll have to work backwards and say, like you said, you want good mediators. So I'm guessing that you're saying we will put them through some kind of a I don't know, whatever skill development program or whatever. So how do we do that? The scale part of it is what you have to address.
I think you can operate with sheer numbers. I think you have to look at sectoral numbers. You have to look at which sectors do you have, you need mediation. In some of those, the mediation strength you need will be limited, because you can handle, more cases. For example, negotiable instrument cases don't need, they go on quickly. Other sectors will need more mediators. Consumer will not, again, a mediator can handle multiple cases in a day. So I think we should look at sectors and see, okay, what is the sectoral need for cases? What's the backlog in the court? What are the kind of cases? And do we have enough mediators now for this? So I think it has to be sector-wise. Sector-wise in each state.
Yeah.
Some states will need it more, some will need it less. So it has to be sector-wise in each state. It's a calibrated exercise.
Because at the same time, Mr. Panju, we also have to look at the disputes that don't come into courts, because we would want prevention also, preventing from coming into courts. I'm not preventing disputes is one thing, and preventing them from coming into courts. So we should also look at that number. And of course, that number was discussed in the Agami Niti Aayog report, which said only 3% to 25% matters come into courts.
Who knows? That's a number out there. Who can anybody say only 3% comes to court? Nobody has any idea.
I'm just quoting a report. That's all.
I can make my own report and send it to you in the evening, What is it?
No, but I think for a proper discussion on Vision 2026, look, I'll tell you why the scale. I'm just talking about the scale because one is the vision as the fact that how it's happened and the way we know mediators as in whatever program they're going through. And that's one way of the world has also picked up, say, from the US a box and taken it on. On the other end, I've been talking about developing from the grassroots. So what would your view be on that? Because I'm saying that let's identify those people who already are doing it, who have that mindset, bring them out, and that we can maybe manage scale there on a public platform, whatever skill development that was required, let's put it out. I'm not saying me, I'm saying in general, maybe the government can have it on their channel or whatever. So maybe we can do on a mass scale, we can do that skill development. How do you, I mean, I just, on the scale part of it is my only concern, because what happens is that we discuss on that maybe a little box that is already mediation in the country, and then that larger part of it doesn't get discussed. So maybe on that aspect, something on that.
I'm wary of, something which is half-baked and taught to people and then told them that you can now take this and go out to mediate. So I think whatever it is, it has to be a properly designed course which people have to undergo. After all, nobody is saying, you spend 1 year learning about mediation. It's a much lower span of time. But I'm wary of of inadequate training and acclimatization, and then putting them out there in the market.
Because you're not.
They jolly well sit and go through a proper course, which is 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is.
No, but I'm just saying.
They don't come.
No, I'm just saying access to that on that scale might not be possible. So the same thing that you're saying, the program, yes, but can we put it on some platform where everyone, like YouTube is a platform that everyone uses. So best in the world, because what I'm trying to do is let's make a structured program, the best in the world on each topic, and let it be available to anyone, anywhere, and then after that, whatever next stages, because why I'm saying that on the grassroots level, some people are already out there in the village and communities who are already doing it. So in a way, the user has already identified them, and ultimately it's the user. I mean, we are no one to tell anyone. And I feel any legislation which doesn't allow people to choose their own mediator, I think should not be there. I mean, that's how I look at it. So on that, I keep asking for the addressing on the scale part of it is because we need many of them out there. So I don't know what your view on that is.
No, I think that's fine. Make it accessible to people.
Yeah.
Let it go through it properly, but provide them also, I think, supplements so somebody actually also being able to interact with them. Ultimately, we must satisfy ourselves that yes, this is a good enough course.
Yeah, no, that will go through. Yeah. No, we'll sit together. I mean, I once asked you for some points also, but I'm asking people from all over the world to give their points. Then we'll all sit together, put out whatever points, whatever needs to be in a way, I mean, put across to people in general. And then we can decide who those people are who will talk about it, because there's some things which we have, say, in the Indian perspective, because I was looking at one course that someone is doing and they brought in something on Chanakya also in that. So, I mean, there are interesting things which can be brought in. So maybe something like that can be looked at. But otherwise, on the legislation part, obviously we've discussed it earlier. But do you want to talk about legislation, what it is? Because why I'm saying the legislation is because on one end we say that there's a bill in the parliament and all. So that's a process which will take its own course. But we have a legislation which I say is the best in the world on mediation, which is the conciliation. Do you want to address that? That why
we've crossed the stage, forget conciliation. We've gone beyond that.
No, because I'm just saying present law, if we can tell people about it, and then when that legislation comes, we can talk about it to people, because what is already on paper available to people, maybe we can talk about that, and if there is something they can start using immediately.
Because basically the law, I think, is very clear now. What I hope will come, it will say mediation is the word to be used. It subsumes conciliation so that we have no confusion between the two. It provides for a mediation agreement to have the status of a decree of a court, and that's, I think, a very strong thing. It provides for who can be a mediator, provides for service training providers, training institutes and service providers. It provides for community mediation. It implements the Singapore Convention. It specifies what cases you can't mediate. So it does, and it provides for a mediation council. So I think overall it's a good platform to take mediation forward. It will kind of. I'm glad we've got rid of this confusion between conciliation and mediation, and the act enables anyone to choose his or her own mediator. It doesn't matter who they are. You want somebody as a mediator, by all means have somebody as a mediator.
But what I was trying to say is that when it comes, we can obviously talk about it because that's not in our control now. You've given your suggestions and everything. Now someone else is going to decide what they're going to put into the parliament and what parliament. So I'm just saying for a moment, we'll take that out of the discussion. I'm just saying that what we have with us today, looking at that and then talking about that being promoted up till that comes, we can obviously talk about that. But today, what we have on paper, then on that basis, what all can we do? How do we put that across to people that you have something on paper which you can use and you can get a court decree sitting in your village? That aspect of it, should we also start talking about that, or you want to wait for the bill to get passed?
I would wait. You can get a decree in your village. I think I would wait a bit.
Today also we have that. I mean, in the conciliation, the same thing happens.
Yeah, but nobody uses it.
That's where the problem is. And would that same thing happen with that bill also, with that act also? I'm just trying to say that the act by itself in 1996 we today say we are waiting for something to come which will change mediation in the country.
No point going back to the Arbitration Conciliation Act. You've lost that battle. That's over. Conciliation has gone out of the window. It's now only mediation.
Yeah, no, perfect. What I'm trying to say is that we had an act. So what did you feel were the issues in that because of which there was not...
It was a good act, but no, who worked it? Who worked it? And by the time it came to be worked, all over the world, people had moved to mediation. Nobody was interested in, thinking about conciliation.
Yeah, as a terminology. But I'm trying to say that 25 years later, we should not be sitting and saying that mediation did not take off for whatever reasons, and the same reasons which applied to conciliation in the last 25 years, same reasons.
This conciliation bit, you're just wasting your time.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that same issues that we had, forget the terminology. I'm saying same issues that we had.
We will talk about conciliation after I leave.
No, we won't talk about that. Whatever Umaji said, that there is resistance from lawyers in relation to...
Yeah, whenever he gets me, he's trying to push conciliation down my throat.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say, the issues involved, that Umaji said that lawyers, the resistance from lawyers. So will obviously new act you might get, but that resistance of lawyers, how do we tackle that in the future? How do we do that?
Resistance from the lawyers expressed to the parliamentary committee, especially about pre-litigation mediation, and they feel it's a very strong threat to them. And the committee has taken, I think, quite serious note of that. And we've also seen how to bring in this element of pre-litigation consultation without making it too daunting for the bar. We can't lose the bar. If we have friction between the bar and the mediators, we have a lot of problems. So we have to kind of bend a little, give way a little, skirt it, sidestep it, move on. So kind of harmonization. We've tried to do that. The committees had very, very good discussions.
Yeah, of course. I'm just saying that let's also within ourselves also, discuss why the root of that issue, and if there is something that needs to be done outside that committee and that discussion. Yes, but because I don't know whether these people, of course, might not have seen that episode, but I said Mr. Panchu is the bridge between the judiciary, the bar, and mediators. So how does the bridge take it? How is the bridge going to handle this?
Like many bridges constructed in India, in danger of falling to pieces.
Don't say that. That's not the best thing to tell the world. So how is a bridge going to handle it? We want to know that.
It's a good question, actually. It's a good question. I think the way to do it is to see that the bridge enables, traffic both ways, meaning communication both ways. And at the same time, the bridge is clear that, that this is a system in which you don't have a highway and a by-lane. You have, you have strong highways. So, of course, you need a litigation highway. There are so many cases for litigation, but you also need a strong mediation highway. Mediation is not the low road. It is as good a highway as, as the litigation highway. So I think a bridge so constructed to enable communication between all, but to clearly, demarcate at whatever point that, look, this is your litigation highway, this is your mediation highway, and both are, 6-lane, 8-lane. You can move fast, it's well designed, the road is good. So if you use the analogy of the bridge, I would say that.
Well, also you'll have to address the fact that this is a joke I made, and I think made it too many times. But I recently found out that mediators also required in mediation. So how are you going to promote mediation, look at their interest? Because you are the bridge, you have to look at the interest of, I'm saying for two parts. One is, of course, mediators in the court system, which of course I'm not part of. So the mediators outside the court system, which we call private mediation, for me that is mediation, and that's what we should be calling mediation, but doesn't matter. I mean, for this discussion, we'll take it as private mediation. So our interest also, because you are a bridge, you have to look at our interest also.
No, I think the interest simply for mediators is to get mediation accepted as a full-fledged system, is to get it professional, which means that you work for reward and you have opportunity to fulfill professional aspirations, that you are respected in the community, and that you have full scope, for your individual development. You have the systems in place, you have the environment in place. And I think that's all mediators, want, to be able to grow as part of a professional family. And that's all they want. Once you give them this, it's you aim for the stars, that's all.
Well, I'll take you through some points from the private mediator's perspective. One, we have, of course, we're discussing with Jawad also. The fact that one, of course, we have on the one end what a litigation lawyer gets. I always give the example of Mr. Salve charging $30,000 for a hearing. I just like to give that thing. On the other end, Jawad in the Madras High Court gets about $100 for the entire mediation. So in terms of how one valuing mediation itself, then other thing for a law graduate or any person wanting to come into mediation, how they perceive mediation. Because I'll tell you very interestingly, that e-mediation writing, that push pen, what they do, they had took out a book. There's a table there on mediation, arbitration, litigation, and in that book itself, they said mediation is a free thing. So imagine this is free. So in that books that they've taken out, that book, I can get a copy line. I don't have it right now in front of me, but Jawad can take it out. I'm sure he has that. So they put out a table comparison between them. So they said is for the curriculum for the law graduates, which is coming up. So in that they've said it's free. So imagine if that's the way we are going to put out, or do you want to put it out that way? I don't know. I mean, if that's the way you want to put it out, that mediation is free, then I don't think that's the correct way to do it, but I don't know what your view on that is.
Who put it out?
I mean, look, I said I only saw one book which was handling the curriculum. The push pen, Tankachan, that book that they've taken out on mediation. So I'm just saying a table in that, is that the way we are going to put across mediation? Because they're both also mediators in the court system also. So is that, because for private mediator, it's an issue, because mediation for us is not free. We don't want to give it free. So how do we balance this out? Because that seems to be the perception. If they've put it in that book. So someone who's written that article has definitely perceived mediation as a free thing. So that's the way the word is going around. So how do we change this aspect?
Well, why should I take note of all ridiculous things here? I mean, some fellow puts out something saying mediation is free. Where is it free? Even the court system pays an honorarium. And once it goes out of the court system, who expects anything to be free?
But what do the parties give in the court system? parties, they pay.
They don't pay anything.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. In that sense, for the parties, it is free. So, because what I'm trying to say is that if today
The state pays the court sum of money, and the court pays an honorarium.
Yeah, for the parties it is free. That's what we were. I don't know whether we had that discussion earlier.
No, if I can say, Maharashtra, they have to pay cost. Not other states. Only in Maharashtra, the parties have to pay the cost of mediation.
For the state, it's a huge saver to support mediation, because the cost of concluding a case in mediation is, infinitely small as compared to the cost of running it through the court system, paying judges and having brick and mortar buildings and all the infrastructure, etc. So the state is actually very happy to pay, for the mediation services.
No, I'm just saying that looking at it from that's why I said private mediators' point of view, that perception of anything is based on some value that you can put out there, from somewhere you bring it. But because out there mediation is in the court system, that's where it's largely done. So free for a party means that this is something that if how much you charge or I charge for mediation. So in that sense, people can value it once they try it, but to bring them in at a cost, which is something which is, I don't know how many times, I don't even want to say how many times because there's nothing on zero, how much you multiply zero by. So how many times more that they are paying is something which, how do we change that perception, and shouldn't we change that perception? Because the self-interest of the court is on one side, and developing mediators and developing a practice, and finally having, like we said, there's so much work to happen. So finally having all of them working on a full-time basis is what we would want. So how do we balance this aspect?
No, balance what? I don't follow.
Self-interest of the court, that we want our caseload to go. So it saves a lot of money to us. So we don't mind it. I mean, it'll be free in the court system. The honorarium, whatever is being paid is, nothing compared to what the same person like Jawad will get outside the court system. But it's our self-interest being taken care of. Of course, we have so many people who are willing to come into the court as mediators. So we have no problem. Why do we need to even get into it? So that's the interest of the court part of it. But on the other end, we want to develop mediation. I don't know, we have a discussion in the conference of whether it's a profession or not, but a full-time activity for some people. And obviously their livelihood, and of course, plus for them also. So that's a balancing, or is it?
I don't think it's a balancing, because I think the development of mediation aids the first part. The more you develop mediation, the more the court benefits by having, its caseload reduced. So there is nothing at odds here to balance. You just develop mediation more, your caseload gets reduced, you handle your caseload better.
No, I'm saying development of mediation can happen major. So we can develop it, development of mediation very easy. If you give it out free to people, development is not a problem. We say it's.
But Vikram, how will you give it free?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So you want like the state to pay? I think it's a good idea. The state starts an Indian mediation service. I think I've been advocating it for years.
That's what I'm saying. And these are the things we need to discuss.
Start an Indian mediation service. I've been saying it for years.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come at some point.
That's what I'm saying. These are the discussions we need to have, because definitely there will be lots of options. I mean, would only think of some of them, but once we have the discussion, we put it out, more aspects will come in, because I've heard in some court, I don't know whether it's Kerala somewhere, they're actually paying the mediators a decent amount there who are in the system. So I of course don't know exactly what's happening in various parts. I only get a few things from there. So is that one way that they get a proper whatever? Because I'll tell you where the discrimination lies. In a court, on one end, when you go for litigation, the lawyer can charge what they want. You go for mediation, there is a limitation put on that honorarium part of it that the mediator gets. I see it as a total discrimination, and on two ends, it devalues mediation, saying that this is what it costs, but litigation costs that much. So we are putting this message out that, okay, this is what the value of mediation in general is. So that first is discrimination, the other is devaluing mediation. So those two aspects also you need to address.
Vikram, can I just intervene for a minute here?
Please, Jawad.
Vikram, I have to sign off now.
Mr. Manju, you can't leave. How can you leave? This is.
I'm sorry, I'm in the midst of an urgent matter in court. I've just taken half an hour permission to join your program.
That's.
There's a hearing going on.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take another time with you, and we'll maybe continue the discussion. We'll up till then of you.
Invite you.
Yeah, you put in a lot of points. We'll discuss those points, and then we'll have another discussion.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Jawad, your intervention is Mr. Manju has to leave because you are intervening. Mr. Manju, you're leaving because Jawad intervened.
No.
So now next time I won't let people unmute themselves. You pushed him out of the discussion, Jawad. It's you.
No, I don't think it's because of me. I'm sure about that. No, I think we're talking of two different things here, Vikram. We talk about court annex mediation and we talk about private mediation. These are two different things. So let's not mix them together. See, the court annex mediation is all about managing cases that have already entered the stream of the court stream. Okay. So those cases have already entered, and how do we manage those cases to ensure that there is no backlog, there is a disposal of the cases, and what kind of recourse are we going to take to? So whether ADR in that context is going to help. That is where Section 89 comes, and that's where courts refer matters to setting up of mediation centers next to the court, framing of rules by the courts for managing the mediation centers, paying honorarium to the mediators, the referring parties to mediation or arbitration or whatever the different ADR methods that are prescribed under the law. Now, the other part of it that we are talking about is plugging that entry point of cases into the court by providing mediation to those people who wish to utilize that process in order to avoid going to the court. So these are two different things altogether.
No, I'll tell you, Jawad, why they're linked. I'll tell you why they're linked. They're linked because on whenever you anything, I forget just mediation in general, if that route of through Section 89 goes through a mediation center in the court, and there is a value put. First time there is a value put for the party. There's a value. Okay, this is free. It comes free to me, or whatever the nominal amount they have to pay. That's mediation by itself. Today, linkage is. Do you have to put a figure to it? So that's the only figure in relation to mediation.
See, I get your point. See, there is no two ways about the fact that some of the policy decisions taken in the context of court annex mediation are flawed. See, for example, as Uma was pointing out earlier, our mediation center started off being managed by lawyers. Okay, it was completely the committee, everything was constituted by the lawyers, and the entire administration was in the lawyers' hands. Then all of a sudden, what happened was the Legal Services Authority was brought into the picture, and a committee of judges was constituted, and it took over the mediation center completely. The administration, the decision making, the policy decisions, everything was taken over by the judges. Okay. Now here, what we felt was that there was a problem because as and when changes were required, as and when some policy decisions had to be taken, it was not easy for us to push those things across because it had to follow a whole lot of protocol and a lot of red tape was involved. So these were the problems that we are still encountering those problems today. So now what has happened is, of course, the MCPC has also been constituted. To the credit of the institution, I must say that, okay, to a large extent, it has served in creating awareness about mediation. It has served in, ensuring that there are substantial referrals. All those things have been happening, and training programs are being regularly conducted. And, as far as the court annex mediation program is concerned, my opinion, regardless of what others may think about it, my opinion is that it's quite a robust system that is working on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to
just one sec. What I'll do is we'll come to this. Prerna has to leave, so we'll just take her view, which she wants to, and then we'll take that into the discussion. So yeah, Prerna, please give us your view because you want to leave.
In fact, I may also have to leave.
No, Jawad, you have to stay. You are not going anywhere. You're not going. This is an important discussion.
Today is an important day for me also, and I have to take my family.
No, you can't. This is important for mediation world. Yeah, Prerna.
I'll be very quick, and thank you so much for having me on board in the session today. And it's so wonderful to have seen Mr. Panchu sir, and of course Jawad bhai and Uma ji. It was so nice to at least get inputs from their end. But as the famous quote goes, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And mediation is grounded in the history and culture of most countries. It's not a new concept. The understanding of the term is common. It has the basic ingredients and rules, which are more or less the same. So what the future basically depends upon what we do today. And in the now, in India, we have the bill, which is waiting to be dedicated as a standalone legislation. It has been widely discussed, I'm sure, in your sessions and several other platforms, which is aiming to give direction and promotion to mediation. And as Sir had covered the concerns which are there and which may require consideration before it gets enacted. So basically, for me, I'm an optimistic, and for me, it's like a concept which is, I have very little doubt in my mind that it'll be the way forward. Because people are becoming aware, and aware not just because of the court mediation. I think even the sessions, the training programs, Jawad is very actively into the quality of programs they are conducting, and I think internationally as well. They are making us not only, I'm talking about mediators, I'm talking about public at large who are inclined to look at it. They are engaging with mediators. They're looking for amicable mode of resolutions, which are, of course, the qualities which we see are efficient, affordability, accessibility, and most importantly for me, mediation is providing a ray of hope for the people in distress. I mean, look around you, which other mechanism is able to do that? So I think it is going to gain momentum, and widely so. The law schools have already introduced it in their curriculum, which is, of course, a laudable step, and it'll bring efficiency once they are educated in this. I applaud the judiciary in a big way because they are promoting mediation. And as Sir had mentioned, and I'm sure my seniors agree, that because of the push judiciary is providing, the lawyers also in their role are actively, educating, informing parties to look at it. And of course, when we talk about the bill, there is already a mandatory pre-litigation provision being provided for. So I think by inserting clause in their contracts, which are being drafted by lawyers, so lawyers are also in their mind, I think the switch is happening. And as Umaji mentioned about family law, I think I would say that that was a very important information, because when we see matters which are more about emotions, which are more about constructive dialogue, which are about preserving relationships, so they they would rather not have their dirty laundry washed in public. They would look at mediation. They would look at an environment which is providing them the confidentiality. And of course, of late, the consumer matters, the IPR matters in the mediation center, Delhi High Court, have met with huge success. So when we talk overall, I think there's a resurgence of mediation from what times we saw. Of course, things are changing. They're panning out in a way which is encouraging parties, and it is attending to their needs. Most importantly, when we sit down with parties, who's actually sitting there to understand what they are saying. And I mean, again, as I said, looking at the future point, I think a lot of areas, sectors will be covered: environment, the governance, the human rights, the businesses, the criminal aspect of it, the restorative justice, as in the US. So I endorse the viewpoint that proper training. I mean, we should not compromise on the training program, because of the reason that if you have mediators, not necessarily, I'm talking about lawyers here, I'm talking about professionals, be it the technical, the medical, the counselors, the bureaucrats, the respected people in society, they would add endlessly to the future, be it in communities, schools, workplace, neighborhood, health systems, and the prisons. So the idea is, when we look at is to transform the conflict, and at an early stage, which of course is a big advantage, and learning the soft skills, emotions. I think once they're addressed, and when we educate the youth, that is something which I think that is one conditioning, if we are able to provide to the society at large, will change things in a big way. And the future for me, I think people, as Sir also mentioned, outside court is something which will be on the rise, because the kind of comfort and the non-adversarial mode which they will have to provided for themselves. And when we talk about the future for the mediators and the lawyers, I think once it's there in the market and you've made a popular name, then the word of mouth and, the market forces basically will decide for you. So in the end, I would just like to, just make a very small note that it's all about our emotional skills. And in the training programs that Jawad Bhai would, I'm sure, contribute, that they are covering such a huge arena. They talk about emotional intelligence. They talk about, now, of course, we're talking about the spiritual aspect. We're talking about the negotiation skills, the resolution skills. And for me, empathy is the best lesson we have learned as mediators, because when we put ourselves in their shoes, we are also teaching ourselves where it is hurting the most. So for me, I think it is not possible in any which way to negotiate with people who say that this is mine and what is mine, but yours is negotiable. It would never work that way. So it has to be both-sided. And of course, collaboration is key. Creativity is, I think, something which helps us move on and let go of things. So I would say that as a mediator, I mean, be it a service, be a profession, even looking at the medical side of it, I mean, as you look at that profession, people choose to either mint money, or they choose to, step into the villages or communities for the common man, which I think is something which should not be ignored even by mediators. And it's basically legacy of carrying good work forward. I mean, that's the way, I wouldn't say for everybody, but few of us might think on similar lines. And I mean, once we've created that trust element, there is no way that people will not go spread the word. But of course, we have, I mean, as a mediator, I'm sure I'm sharing this every time we sit for a mediation, we have a dream that hope this party is able to resolve. But not necessarily it happens. And we just pray that, they look at a better aspect and prospect of how they want to take their dispute forward. So I would say that for me, assured, it's like going to be a resounding success. So that's the way I look at it at mediation. Thank you for your time. I'm sure everybody's busy.
Perfect. So you've given us the larger points to discuss, and at least looking at the future and getting us out of what we were into, that old structure of the courts and all that. So good. That the larger picture is, of course, what we were trying to paint. So you've given us the colors there, and this strokes.
Just before Prerna leaves, I want to tell her that I fully agree with whatever she said. That is why I said that when we look at these two facets of mediation, one, mediation, court annex mediation as a case management system in the courts, and the other, private mediation, where it will be a profession where professional mediators will be sitting and mediating. Now, when we talk about the case management system, Vikram, my humble view is that now that is entirely for the court to decide. Okay, how this is going to be run, how this is going to be conducted, whether it is going to be offered free of cost to the parties, or whether the parties are going to be charged nominally, or whatever it might be, ad valorem, whatever it might be. Now it's for the court to decide. Now, if I'm working for $100 per case, now I'm not doing it out of any compulsion. I'm doing it because I want to do it. Okay, because it gives me an opportunity to practice mediation in a whole range of disputes. I don't have to, necessarily confine myself to family disputes or commercial disputes. So the whole gamut of disputes I get an opportunity to deal with. It helps me to keep, sharpening my skills, and helps me to remember the basic principles of mediation. So I do get those benefits. And besides, the rules don't say that I have to only, if supposing parties want me as a mediator or Uma as the mediator, then we have the right to agree with the parties on what will be the fee that would be paid to us. That's what the rules provide for. Or if the court appoints a mediator, the court can specify the fees that parties will be paying to the mediator. So there is a provision for that. It is not as if, mediators are given only that much. It's only when you follow the roster system and the mediation center goes by the roster system to appoint the mediators, then the question of honorarium comes. So that there is a fixed honorarium that is paid by the court.
Today,
Now that is as far as the case management system of the court is concerned.
This discussion, what we do, what I'm saying is that what Prerna has given us the larger thing, because definitely this is a major discussion that we have to have. But on the larger canvas, while she's there, because she's put out these nice things out there on that larger canvas, please put those spots there, and we'll maybe connect the dots or we'll paint something. So please, we'll have to go beyond this discussion, definitely. So please give us a larger picture on the
I think we'll
nice
start
things.
with Uma because she's been listening for a very long time now.
But yeah, we have to look futuristic point of view. We'll definitely always have this discussion, and I will always have my view on this, which we are going to take up after. We'll take this up, but on the nice positive aspects of things and how you look at the nicer aspects of developing mediation and generally for people in general in the country, something on that.
As Prerna was saying, now that it is part of the curriculum, I think that is very encouraging. And see, initially when we were trained, and subsequently the rules also started saying you must have 15 years of experience as a lawyer, and only then you could be trained and all that, So that sort of put people in a slot where their mind was conditioned to look at disputes in a particular way. And then to unlearn and learn became very difficult. That's what we are facing even now. But then when this has been made available to students who are interested, who would like to take it up, then I find a lot of students asking whether I can take it up as an independent profession. Can I do a master's in this? Can I find an office where I can practice only this? So that kind of interest is really encouraging. The only thing that Jawad and I have always been discussing and have been saying is that what we need to do is not take people just because they have finished so many years of practice and they are a lawyer. As Prerna was also saying, that we need other people in construction, in medical field and every other field, people who are willing to sit down and understand that particular perspective of that problem. So we need to have other people, and also we need, I personally feel that we have to have some scale. See, for every course that you join, there is some qualification. Here it can't be just years of being enrolled. It needs something more. Your attentiveness or your willingness to listen, or there must be some scale to judge whether these people will be able to do something in this. And if they are trained, I think, because the courts are spending a lot of time. As Jawad was saying, there are so many refresher courses and other courses. But how much of it is effective in the sense that people are imbibing the skills? See, the recent training that we were doing, we had to start with the opening statement. We had to tell them why they have to reframe. And in spite of all that, when we were doing a virtual session yesterday to sort of close the whole session, practically everyone, I think Jawad will agree with me, was saying we have to convince the parties. Now, they are not able to get that word convince out of their vocabulary. Although I specifically said you have to remove that word from your head. You can't think of convincing. So somewhere along the line, I found something very nice the other day when I was reading, said, the human tendency towards peace and violence is explicable in terms of evolution and socialization. So what is the socialization? Are we willing to look at another person as a human being? So I think it is not just mediation training which will be effective. I have a cousin who lives in Sydney, whose daughter was about 6 or 7 when she came to visit, and she said, we have a philosophy class. And I asked her, what is this philosophy class? She said, we have to make the others happy. So they sort of massage the hair or, share something nice. And that's a kind of bonhomie that is created in classes. So I think somewhere along the line, we need to have in schools or somewhere, I don't know how it's going to be done, but then some sort of an understanding that you can be kind to the next person, or you can listen to the other person and you can understand the other person's perspective. And I think that is where it starts. You can't change a 40-year-old person who is conditioned to think of the other person as the enemy. So when we are talking about mediation, we are not talking just about, handling the dispute that they have or the differences they have. We are talking about changing the mind process, changing them to understand how important this relationship is or what they can do with it. So when, this free service, when you say, it comes because the court thinks that I have trained you, so you better be available for these hours to do mediation. And so how effective is it? Are people able to devote so much time and attention when they know that they will just get a pittance, as you were saying, comparatively you can earn otherwise? In that way, I like what Giribala Singh has started in Madhya Pradesh. She has people in police stations who are not trained mediators, but who know about mediation and give them that information. So What Naja Alexander also says is that we must have a hybrid kind of mediation today. It can't be strictly evaluative or facilitative. We can have elders, we can have so many other kind, I mean, neutrals who can evaluate and all that. So I think some sort of evolution in that way to understand that, but of course you need to know, have the necessary skills, but then to understand how all this can be connected, because today we are just talking about mediation. We are not talking about learning to mediate and just practicing it in the sense that you're doing mediation. It is more of an evolvement of that particular human being and evolvement of the mediator himself. See, yesterday when I was talking about the mediator's paradox. It's very difficult not to control those people and tell them what to do. And how does the mediator overcome that? So that kind of training is also very necessary. That kind, more than that training, I think it's that kind of consciousness is more necessary. So what we need today is, when we look at social evolution, I think we need to understand what kind of space can be provided, because unless the space is there, the thinking process will not change. So are we able to give that kind of space for the people to pause, to reflect, to understand, and then move on? So when we are talking about that kind of space and evolution, and the mediator who is helping in this process, can he or she do it just as a free service? Or yesterday also somebody was saying mediation is different from arbitration or the rest of it because it's a service, you have to help humanity. It's all very nice to talk about all that, but in practical terms I don't think you will be effective unless you're going to be paid for the value that you're giving. So I think in terms of value also, how much people recognize the value of what you're doing, and for that, even to recognize the value, I think the mind state has to say. See, that's what I was thinking the other day. When we talk about mindset, we are saying that people are conditioned, people are positioned, they hold on to these views. But then it is just a little shift. You go into the mind state, it becomes totally different. You can change your mind state. So I think that kind of evolution is what we have to address. And once we do that, I think the whole scenario, because from litigation, we have moved into a process where people are thinking about mediation. Yes, lawyers have not willingly accepted it, still are not, what shall I say, proposing it to their clients to say, why don't you try this, except for a very few. But to be actively involved in mediation, they must also believe that it is going to help them. Not just to help the parties, but help them in different ways. Of course, one is the financial aspect. So I think in the larger frame, what we have to look at is, yes, look at training in the sense that we teach some skills. We first identify what kind of potential they have, identify how they can be tuned in to understand why the differences, or how to handle the differences, and then to enable the parties to take responsibility for whatever decision they are taking, and for the mediator to stand a little away from the whole thing, at the same time be involved. And I think that skill we still need to develop, all said and done, because we can talk about bias, we can talk about so many things, but mere acknowledgement of that is not enough. Putting it into practice is what is needed. That is why I feel starting it very young is very, very necessary. That's how I look at the larger picture today. Of course, money will come in once it is an accepted profession. And once these youngsters who are coming out of law college realize that they would like to first sit across a table and talk before filing a plaint or a petition, I think they are sort of tuned into that, but they still have to accept it because they don't see a very bright future as of now. And if we show them the path to for them to progress in a particular way, I think they would catch on and they would be able to carry on the beta. That's what I think.
Perfect. No, of course, a lot of points you picked up. We'll of course take it, but I want to go to Jawad but for a moment, Jawad, because we get into the same discussion, we won't get into that right now. What I'll do is I'll take you to we are now not having the discussion today. We're having this discussion 1996. There is a law come in, but the law is called mediation, not called conciliation. It's called mediation. Nothing. The same law, nothing, but it's called mediation. Now, how would you have taken mediation out, and how you would have wanted to develop it without having any baggage of the CPC, of this being done in courts, because 1996 got a blank slate and a very good legislation was passed at that time. So taking from there, how would we do it so that when today, if we have to take it, all that baggage goes out and we focus on a larger picture. So please, from that perspective.
Well, that's a bit tough to answer, Vikram, because we have seen from experience that even after 1996, Part 3 being in existence since 1996 talks about conciliation, talks about the voluntary nature of that, and all those aspects. Even today, many people are not aware of it or how it works. That awareness is not there at all. Now, whom are we going to blame for it? I honestly don't know. Now, all this came into focus only after the 1999 amendment of the CPC, where Section 89 was brought in. This was, of course, notified much later, 3 years after after being enacted. It was notified in 2002. Now, even after 2002, nothing was happening. And this went on for a very long time until 2005, 2006, when we started training mediators and we started having a mediation center in the High Court. And from there onwards, what happened was, I think the Supreme Court started, taking cognizance of that. And it was because of the Supreme Court that today we have mediation centers established everywhere. And, we had the good fortune of having judges like Justice S.P. Sinha was there, and then Justice Madan Lokur was there, who took it very seriously. Now, there might have been some policy decisions which we may not agree with, but then that is all about what we feel and what they feel. That there's always bound to be a differing point of view between different people. So, notwithstanding that, a considerable amount of progress has been made, and as Uma pointed out, that today, from a time when there was absolutely no knowledge, because 1996 statute had it, there was a process called conciliation on the statute book. But except that, I remember sometime in, I think it was some 1997 or something, when a client of mine received a notice regarding a credit card dispute, which was referred to conciliation by the bank. And I told him, please attend it. Then he comes back to me and says, no, I'm told that, it is not mandatory. If I don't attend, nothing's going to happen. So I said, choice is yours. So you have an opportunity to talk and settle the matter. You use it or you don't use it. It's up to you. So this is how, things were happening. And except for a few institutions like one or two banks that were exploring this prospect of settlement of disputes through a process of conciliation, there was virtually no whisper about conciliation, either from the lawyers or from the judges or from any other stakeholder. So it existed on the statute book, but it was a dead letter law because nothing was happening in that. Now, this consciousness came only after, these changes came, particularly after the Afghan's judgment of 2010. That is when even Section 89 was started, being taken seriously, and a referral started happening. Until then, it was just, we were just paying lip service to it, and nothing much was happening.
No, I'm coming in, Jawad, again. I like to interrupt you, so please, I won't apologize for it.
I just request you that if I could kind of leave.
Thank you very much for coming in, Prerna. It's always nice to see you. And please drop into other sessions of the conference. Please, we need your inputs.
And I'm grateful to Jawad Bhai and Maji for their wonderful inputs, because I think whatever and anytime we are together, we learn so much from them. And thank you again for having me over, Vikram. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But Prerna, before you leave,
thanks for joining.
Before leaving, one question. Have you seen the schedule of the conference? And there's a penalty if you haven't. Okay, so it's very clear. Okay, there's a penalty. Okay, she's penalized. Now we got the answer. Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prerna. Looking forward to meeting you in Delhi.
Absolutely. So am I.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So this is what I'm saying, Jawad. Look, how much ever I can try, but I cannot even promote on the basic level that I want to do it. Forget the larger thing. But again, I'm taking you out of that. Look, I know you know the whole path. the point right now is that we might have changed the word from conciliation to mediation in the general understanding, because you are entrenched in the court system. For you, it is mediation, but outside the court system today, it is still conciliation. So we should not, because I'm saying being entrenched is something we sometimes get lost in what is happening in the world outside. In India, outside, even if there is any discussion on mediation, largely it comes from what is happening in the court system. There are people who are going out there and madhyastha, they talk about madhyastha and they talk about mediation, and that they do to talk about it, but becomes that discussion for them becomes a general discussion. What gets passed on, I know I'd done a session, which is of course the Zoom link, I can send you the YouTube the link to that Facebook link, I think, that how it was put out to those people in that village and what they understood from it. And finally, if that is how they're going to take it forward, it's a problem, because they were looking at it from what the panchayat does and decision making. So that's a problem we will have to get. So why I was taking you back to 1996 was that because of the fact that we don't have any baggage, the future that we have to see is the same thing today. Today, we within ourselves know there is something in the CPC, there is something happening in the court system, but reaching out to people outside just think that they don't know anything about it. So we have to start the same way, but only because in our discussion, the mediation and the court system will keep coming up. So that's why I'm trying to remove that from the discussion. I'm just saying future for mediation in the country on the larger perspective, having whatever has happened, we know the past, but because even in that so many years being part of the court system also, awareness is not there. So today, if you have to do that kind of an activity to put it out into the country, what would you do there? What are the steps that you want to take there?
So I'm sure Uma will agree with me on this, because what we have found is, see, one, of course, the court system has helped to create that awareness, at least in the legal fraternity, that there is such a process and therefore you can utilize it. And we have come a long way. We have traveled a long way from the time we started the mediation center in Madras High Court. We have come a long way where lawyers who were initially very reluctant and who were violently opposed, I'm using that word consciously, violently opposed to the concept of mediation, are today slowly coming around. And what is happening is, we find in our training programs, the language of the lawyers who come to be trained as mediators undergoes a transformation. It becomes we as mediators and they as lawyers. The distinction comes about. So it is virtually a conversion that happens in the mediation training program. So I think one of the best ways perhaps would be to do two things. One is to train sufficient number of mediators. The other would be to train lawyers themselves in mediation advocacy, because there has to be a change in the mindset of lawyers, the way they approach a case from the litigation perspective and from the mediation perspective. It has to be two different things. They can't approach from a litigation perspective a case that they are assisting a client in mediation. Okay. So that transformation has to come about. And my only thing is that it is going to be a slow progress. But there is a progress we have seen happening, and we are sure that it will happen, because now when you talk about, at the grassroots level, I think what best can be done. Now, this is where the government steps in. And because I think the kind of resources that the government has, it's not that we cannot individually do on our own these things, but I'm sure the government, if it, takes this seriously and really wants to implement it, I think this is where I think starting from, encouraging mediation of community disputes, disputes involving groups of people, individual disputes, because we have a system of the panchayat, we have a system of elders sitting and mediating. But perhaps what we can do is we can try to create that awareness at a local level. So, for example, somebody approached me to come and conduct some mediation training for people who sit in these matrimonial disputes in the Muslim community. Okay, for example, Jamaat leaders are there, and there are some religious leaders. So one of my friends was talking to me and saying that after he underwent the mediation training, he realized the intricacies of the process, and he realized that this would be really helpful in that at that level. So what he felt was that instead of imposing their decisions upon the hapless couples who come before them, or, taking those regressive, imposing some regressive ideas of what should be a woman's rights and what should be man's rights. Instead of those concepts, it would be better that, if these leaders are trained in the concept of mediation, that they would be able to do a better service to the people and, help them to resolve their differences and disputes. So I agreed to that, but unfortunately it did not materialize, because there are 2-3 things in the pipeline, because they're still working on it. They're trying to get the sufficient number of people who would participate in that kind of training. And another was from Bombay, another community. I think it is a Sindhi community, because they have also a method where they sit and talk about resolution of disputes, and the elders sit and resolve those disputes. So there again, there is an invitation to come and train them. That is also being worked out. The details of that are being worked out. So then another colleague of mine, Aparna, and I, we did a community training, mediation training in Auroville, near Pondicherry. I think you must have heard of Auroville.
Yeah, nice place.
Because there also they have this method of resolving disputes by sitting and talking to each other. And so we trained a bunch of mediators who will be able to do this, to help to resolve those disputes. There is a Muslim Ismaili community who have a very robust mediation system, because they don't go to court at all. Any inter-community that is within the community, any dispute, be they commercial or personal or family or whatever, they are all referred to mediation. And they have trained mediators all over the world. And they have a global presence. The community can be found in India. Basically, they are from India, but they are spread all over the world. The diaspora is quite huge. And they have a very robust system of resolving disputes of mediation. Now, the only way that we can perhaps create this awareness is through programs like yours, where we invite people from different walks of life to come and talk about their experiences in dispute resolution. We conduct training programs for, at the community levels, where we encourage the elders of the community or the leaders of the community to explore, applying these techniques for dispute resolution, so that there is a more peaceful and more collaborative method, rather than decisions being imposed on the disputing parties. So this way, I think we can. I think it's a long-term effort that we have to do. One more thing, I look at mediation. I put it in 3 different perspectives. One is, of course, the court annex mediation as a case management system. How the courts apply mediation, that's up to the courts to decide. They make the policy. The other is professionalizing mediation to prevent cases from going to the court, and how are we going to resolve, whether they are commercial or family or personal disputes, how are we going to resolve them? Have a set of commercial mediators, train those mediators to sit upon these mediations and resolve the disputes. The third is at a larger community level, where we train people on how to deal with conflicts, at their own individual level, at a community level, at a social level. So, for example, there is the concept of peer mediation, training school children in the dispute, how to manage conflicts and how to deal with conflicts. I think Uma is doing a lot of work in Shastra. So once or twice I have been with her, where we train the students to deal with conflicts. In fact, we had a very interesting experience there, because the students were having a lot of issues with the warden. And, we made them sit and play. One person played the role of the warden, and there was a bunch of the students' representatives. And the interaction started off at a very stormy level. Okay. It was quite, a lot of accusations. And then we slowly told them that, why don't we try this approach? And the whole conversation got transformed. So they were able to understand each other's interests and, progress further. So now what happens at that level of training is that they start understanding that, okay, if we are at conflict, we don't have to be, attacking each other. We don't have to be, having a sort of an adversarial approach to conflict, but there is a way of doing it. So basically, training people in skills like how to effectively communicate, how to convey your interests, how to listen effectively. These, I feel, will be the larger aim of the whole, project of mediation, if I may call it that. So the project of mediation should be to ensure of a conflict-free society. Of course, it is utopian to imagine that, but we can always aim at it. At least, if we can make a difference, even to a small level at different, levels of society, I think it will make a lot of difference. So that is how I see it. I don't have any grandiose dreams of transforming the whole dispute resolution landscape in the country, but I do feel that, small efforts like what you are doing, what we are doing, in our own different ways, we are doing it. So this is going to create that awareness, and this is where I think the value comes. So here is where we are all adding value to what we are trying to do to perhaps change society. And who knows, maybe we may not live to see it. Maybe my grandchildren will live to see the day when we have a conflict-free society, when we have a conflict, we sit and talk to each other and agree to resolve it. See, we have been, for hundreds of years, we have got a sort of the only dispute resolution method we have known is, if we have a dispute, if Vikram and I have a dispute, it has to be somebody like Uma or Prerna or somebody who can resolve the dispute for us. It's not that something that you and I can sit and talk, and perhaps Uma can just help us to have that dialogue and to resolve. We don't know that. We had kings, we had panchayats, we had different levels of officials who would sit and decide. So there was always the adjudicatory method was what we always knew. We were the culture of dispute resolution through adjudication is a culture that is imbibed in us. Now we are talking about a shift in the paradigm of dispute resolution, and that is going to be a very long journey. So we can't expect miracles to happen. Okay, so I see a long journey ahead. I see a long struggle ahead. I think we are all working towards that. And I'm very happy to see the progress. Today, we are talking about a statute for mediation. That is a very positive development, which was not there 20 years back when we started. We could have thought of a statute at that time. We did not, but we are at least thinking about it now. So these are all positive developments which are, taking us closer and closer towards realizing the dream of a conflict-free society. Maybe I sounded too preachy or...
No, it's perfectly all right. Because the only thing is that in that discussion, of course, there are lots of things which, of course, I think, which I will put across to you, but we'll take Umaji's if there's any. Umaji, what Jawad said, is there anything that you want to take forward? Because I'll also want to put my view also there to take your thoughts on that. So I'll do that. So Umaji, anything else that you felt from what Jawad said?
I think he's fairly covered it. I think today the social evolution has to be the change of the way of thinking from just going to court and then going to some sort of resolution process through the court to approaching directly somebody who will be able to help you. And that change can be possible only when people are able to take ownership over the problem, or having the capacity to think that they can make a decision which will work for them. And towards that, enhancing their mind state to believing that they can take responsibility. I think that should be the focus now. And once that is done, I think we'll be able to help them. And that is where the lawyers also come in. See, for example, during this last month itself, I had 2 matters which could have been settled. But the councils did not help at all. In one, the senior counsel in whose office one of the grandsons was there, merchant families, so a lot of properties, businesses and all that. So this grandson has grown up along with the litigation, became a lawyer only because of this litigation. So he didn't want to let go. And his senior said, he's there, he will take care. So it was totally positioned and nobody was prepared to tell them the reality. In the other case, again, it was a naval commander who was president of an association. So he had views about what is right and wrong, and I specifically called the lawyers and said, you will have to instruct your clients, and I spoke to them at length. They agreed with me privately, but before the parties, I'm sure they did not talk about the reality at all. So I think somewhere along the line, the self-confidence of the lawyers also has to be boosted. They also have to understand. See, I think Jawad was also with me in that training when in Delhi, we had a video conference speech by Judge Weinstein. And he said that as when I do media, of course, he's given up his post of being a judge to become a mediator. But he says when he mediates, at the end of the day, he tells them what to do, and the parties go back and tell people at home. These were his words. He said, it's come from the judge, so it should work. I don't think that is mediation. So today, I think I don't know how we are going to do it, but parties have to realize that it's okay for them to make a decision. It's okay for them to live with that choice, whether it works or not. But then they have to see whether it will work, and they have to be conscious of what can happen. To that extent, if we are able to move them, I think that's fine. And that is where our so-called training or so-called mind state or the thought process has to move on. And for that, whatever we can, and that can be possible only outside the court system, not with, as Jawad said, it is one thing for one way of looking at it as compartmentalization in court. See, for example, one of our judges recently, before the vacation started, I was told in custody matters, when lawyers asked for mediation, he said, "What is there? After all, the child is involved, so the husband and wife have to get back. What are you going to mediate about it?" And most of our mediators also, I have found, say, "Okay, there's a child, so they have to get back." We were trying to convince them to get back. And similarly, when you ask even about a time-barred debt, they have this moral righteousness which works through and makes them make a decision for the parties. Often we have seen that. So unless we are able to say that it's not your decision, it's somebody else's decision, and for them to work it through, that's the way I think will be the way forward.
Well, I tell you, the steps that I am looking at, of course, these are discussions part of the conference also. But Jawad, I'm telling you, you are also seen in the screen when it goes live. So your distraction seems to be that you're not interested in what we are saying. So because there's the two views you have. You have a gallery view, you have the speaker view. We were on gallery views. Okay, your distracted part is not a nice thing to see. So
no, not distracted. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so actually, these are discussions you also have to be part of. The first step is that the whole colonization and that mindset, that whole conditioning over hundreds of years, that dispute resolution happens in courts and lawyers have to be involved. So we have to, of course, have that discussion, how to change that part, because I want mediation discussions to never refer to the courts. And that discussion also should not, there is no concept. It's a totally different dispute resolution process, has nothing to do with the courts at all. It's a different process. It's like I keep giving the example that you have the allopathic doctors and you have the Ayurvedic doctors. Allopathic doctors are sitting today to even give suggestions on how to regulate Ayurveda, which is, I feel, the most serious issue which no one can talk about, because again, the colonization mindset, judiciary can do what they want, they can say what they want, and you people also can't criticize them because you're part of the system. I'm sitting out and I'm doing it. I will do it also because they have nothing to do with it. So that's one, that discussion we have to have, and that's going to be a process, not going to happen in a day or two. It's a whole conditioning of the mind. How do you even expect the judiciary to move out of something which they are not connected with? They think they're connected with something else, and to question the judiciary, who's going to do it? That okay, so all that will happen. That's a separate point. But from what all you people say, the first thing is the grassroots aspect of it. I'm telling you, you people practice in a certain way. You have your way of doing mediation. On the other end, what Mumaji you said on the lawyer's part of it, a junior lawyer told me that a senior had told her that you go into a mediation, you have to disrupt the process. Do not let the parties settle. Do something about it. Whatever you have to say, whatever. So that's the way it's happening, practice from the lawyer's perspective. One point of the lawyer part of it. The other end of the lawyer part is that if they are going to benefit from the process which they are using in the US, which they started using here, they will get their fees, and good fees in that mediation in the court system. Mediator gets nothing. Same thing happened there. The mediator in the court system got nothing. Lawyers control the system. They are the ones mediators are dependent on. So either we go that path. If that's going to be the future, I don't want that to be the future. So how do we are able to get out of it? Because what has happened in that process is matters get into the courts and then go out into mediation through a mediator in the court system. Mediator gets kind of nothing and the lawyers make their money. But for that system, matters have to come into the court. So I keep giving, statistics, 100 million matters come into courts in the US, and obviously only a certain percentage goes to trial. Largely they get settled either through negotiation with the parties, arbitration or mediation, whatever way they do it. So they go down. India, we can't afford to do that. 18 million matters and we are clogged. If for us, their population is 300 million, 100 million go into court. If our case, if 400 million go into courts, that'll be the end. So if we even think, and yesterday, that's why I was wanting you people to come into that discussion. She's a judge in the she just of course retired now, and she's saying how their system is clogged. Imagine that from their end, if that whole system 45 years and everything and mediation, all that conversation, it's still the court system gets clogged. That pathway, I think we have to start discussing and not take from another country or what happened there. Maybe they went totally wrong. that whole concept of connecting it to the courts and judges, and like you said about Judge Weinstein, this concept of jams, Prachi Mehta, she was a jams fellow. I had that mediator experiences with her, and say that's the way it functions there. Basically, you go to this retired judge and you sit and they tell you what to do and you do it. This is exactly what the traditional method was. So what did we change from there? What Jawad just spoke about, that the person just told them what to do. So the sensitizing them is something that needs to be done. And I am saying that the grassroots level activity might be that. And I've been telling people to watch that Simpla Symposium. James Mangareri in Kenya, he's doing that down to the traditional methods, the communities, the tribes. He's going down there and conditioning and sensitizing them, like what Jawad just said, that he told them about what mediation is, and that person maybe understood certain things and they'll take it into their process. So that's one activity which I feel needs to be done. I mean, in terms of your mediators, you keep saying training and everything. I will show you after I cut this session, live session, I'll show you an interview with a mediator in the Supreme Court. He just says, mediator will decide, mediator will decide, mediator will decide. 4 times in that interview. So can you imagine, you can do all your training in the world, whatever happens in that room, how they go about it, how will you be able to change that? So we might say that mediation is happening. The parties have understood from this particular mediator that the mediator will decide. So they take it back. That word of mouth is the reverse thing that we do not want. Word of mouth is mediator, the court appoints a mediator, the mediator decides. That's the message which will go out. So that pathway by itself is that the pathway where we want. So I'm saying, look at all those issues also, because you people are entrenched in the court system and you are part of it. Can we start questioning that part and saying this has to develop outside the court system and on a proper, as if you say profession, that's another discussion you have to be part of in the conference also. Profession question mark, is it a profession? I have to be part of it also. Is it a way of life, whatever? Or are media supposed to rise above everything and they are supposed to just do it as a free activity? All that we will discuss. So there's another discussion on free versus pro bono, because that debate has to happen. Because if something is available, someone can afford something, and to be able to give them that as free, is that the correct approach? So because I was saying about your CPC, let me look at the CPC. CPC says mediation, conciliation, arbitration, whatever route. So for a moment, let's just think whatever is on the judgment, AFCONs, forget that. We can always change that. No judgment is so for life. So can we say that when mediation option is given, let that stay in that mediation center, but only for people who can not afford mediation outside? So the pro bono part of it, that whole distinction between free and pro bono is free to a person who can afford it, pro bono to a person who can't afford it. So can we keep it as that, the mediation centers in the courts, and people like Jawad who wants to do the good activity and also learn from the process, they do it as a pro bono activity in the court system. Otherwise, you go for conciliation outside into, for a moment, it is the act. We can't, if people want to run away from that act, you can't run away from that act. It exists on paper. We can talk about this bill coming in into making an act. That's a futuristic thing. We don't know what's going to happen, but if we have that, so can we send that out into conciliation from the court system? Arbitration, you go out of the court system. If you get a settlement agreement in a conciliation, that's as good as a court decree. You don't have to come back to the court. If you can't settle there, you can always come back to the court. No one gives you, so no one says your access to court has stopped. So can we also start maybe talking about it? And if the law says that, I mean, law, whatever I can say, we can restructure it. So can we start talking about that in the court system itself? That keep that for the pro bono part. So that's one discussion. What else? I mean, I'm saying that let's open it out. I'm not saying that we know everything, but please, I want you to move a little bit out of that entrenchment in the process with the way it's happening, the whole thing. So from that point of view, because I keep saying, Jawad says, I want to learn from there, so I'm giving it out. I don't want anything out of it. But what happens is that a person with that seniority, he can, whatever, $100 is what he gets, and he's okay with it. But every time he does that, I've been telling him also, I can tell everyone, every time you do that free service, you hit my livelihood. That's why it affects me. You say, well, how is it connected to me? It's connected to me because if senior mediators are available, people will go through the mediation centers in the court. They will say we will get so and so appointed, and that person will give it to us for free. Why do we want to appoint a mediator outside and pay them huge fees? It's not small fees. Okay, we charge decent fees. So Mr. Panchu, I was telling him, Mr. Panchu charges senior good fees. So why would they want to come to us if we can get them appointed in the court system itself? So that's why it affects us. So everything you do there has a repercussion on mediators outside the court system. First, devaluation of mediation, definitely. What is, if I have to say today, I have to ask someone to pay a fees, he goes to the Legal Services Authority, that what they've taken out in the Commercial Courts Act, that schedule, whatever honorarium, if he just looks at that, so this is what a mediator has to get. And the Delhi one I've seen, I don't know what happened in Tamil Nadu. Delhi, it says maximum 37,500 rupees. Maximum, and that's over a crore rupees. I don't know, whatever that is. So that is $500 is the maximum you can get on the most high value commercial matter. So that is what a mediator is supposed to charge. How are you even asking for more fees than that? This is the value of mediators. Now publicly it is available. Mediators, we have to always look at that schedule. Is that the way? I'm saying this discrimination part. I'm saying that you had this multi-door courthouse concept which was developed. You're coming into that. Mediation, arbitration, litigation, these are three options in front of you. Everyone in that, the mediator, the litigation lawyer, and arbitrator gets the same amount. Then I will say you're a fair system. No one can charge for a total mediation. Jawad gets $100. The litigation lawyer will also get $100 for the entire case. Arbitrator also that. That is the day your mediation center will be closed down, or that multi-door courthouse will be closed down, because there is a lobby. The lawyers are a lobby by themselves. They'll make sure. But what about the mediators who don't have that lobby? Because you people are not going to come towards my side. You are not going to say we will come to the private mediators only, and we have that. So when we can, if I had that much of a support, we'll go and close down the mediation center in the courts. But we can't do that. So Umaji has something to say on that. Yeah, Umaji.
See, what has happened is a lot of retired judges, even in our place from the beginning, some district judges were trained. Of course, they come with the authority of a judge, and it's very difficult for them to change. Of course, they make the decisions, or they are very authoritative. That was in the initial stages. Now we find a lot of retired Supreme Court judges also coming into mediation. And as you were saying, in Chennai, I think it's a maximum of 6,000 or something. That's all. Okay, so we don't even get paid for, let's say, for a day. That's what is happening. And we will find that when a judge is being appointed, although the rules, as Jawad was saying, says that except for one or two cases where Jawad and I did get some fees, but otherwise, the judges also feel that we should be obliged to them for their giving their case to us. And they don't want, even if this is pointed out, they don't want to say direct the parties to pay, although they know the kind of effort that we have put in. On the other hand, these judges, whether they have been trained as a mediator or whether they have done any mediation at all, their sitting fee is practically very high compared to what
you can say that. You can tell us the fees. You can say it. There's no problem. We need it out there in the public domain.
No, I can give you an example of what happened in a family partition dispute when the Chief Justice of India, a former Chief Justice of India, appointed a former Supreme Court judge as a mediator and fixed a fee of 4 lakhs per session.
Please, dollars also you have to convert.
4 lakh rupees. I mean, I converted it into dollars.
$5,000.
$5,000 per session. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the same, in a similar matter, if Uma or I are appointed as mediators, we will not be allowed to fix a fee like that, or we will not be.
In that same the family court, I had done the mediation for which I got 500 rupees.
500.
That's okay. You know that it's always I like to convert. It is less than $10. Less than $10.
It is not just affecting you; it is affecting us also. Because see, for example, I told you in the last thing that a lawyer comes to me and asks me, "What will be your mediation? I mean, what will be your fees for the mediation before we go to the court?" And I tell the fees, and then the lawyer goes back and tells the client, "We'll do one thing. Let's file the case in the court and get it referred to the same mediator." So when the matter comes to me, gets referred to me, I realize that it's the same lawyer, the same party who actually approached me earlier. So now they don't have to pay anything. So yeah, you're absolutely right. See, this is indeed affecting the profession of mediation as such. I no two ways about it. But the fact remains that, again, if the court is using something as a case management system, as a matter of policy, if the court is deciding on certain aspects and it's implementing a system, we would much rather, we would indeed prefer a sort of a discussion with us, because before taking policy decision, if the court can discuss with us and frame a policy that would help both the mediators as well as, meet the needs of both the mediators as well as the courts, nothing like it. But the whole problem here is,
I just come in. I won't miss. I'll miss out of this. You said if they want to discuss with us. I am saying that colonization mindset has to go. You have to discuss with us. When will we reach that point? Because the judiciary thinks they're way beyond everyone. They can take. They don't have to care a damn about anyone. I'm saying that is the stage we have to reach. And for that, I just want to. I cut you off. Maybe I'll do it after that. Just I cut you. I have a point that I want to make to you there. Yeah, please. Yeah, you were saying something.
So the thing is, see, again, coming back to what you said first, because you said a whole lot of things, and some of the points that I wanted to answer on that. As far as our culture is concerned, see, it has to do basically with the mindset, which is again, formed by the culture that we are. Now, let us understand one thing, that today, the kind of culture, when you travel to other countries, you see the informal manner in which the judges are addressed when they meet outside the courts. Okay, and there is no differential treatment of judges. They are treated just like any other person. I attended a conference recently in Belfast, and I found that the judges sitting and talking to lawyers very casually, and there was no special status given to them, no special, except perhaps the Chief Justice and the Master of the Rolls. They were given some differential treatment, but other than that, I think everybody was treated on par with all other delegates. Now, we don't have that kind of culture. We have a culture where a lot of deference is shown to authority. That is our culture, and we have a very strong hierarchy here. Okay, and the way we are brought up as from our childhood is that don't question authority. First, it is your parents, then it is your teachers, then it is your boss whom you work for, your senior or the judge or the political leader, anybody. We are taught to defer to authority, to treat leaders and our superiors with a lot of deference. So I read a joke recently. A manager cracks a joke, and everybody laughs except one person. So the manager turns to him and says, "Did you not find my joke funny?" So this man replies, "I resigned 2 hours ago." Okay, so you get the message there, right? So everybody else laughed because whether it was a good joke or not, you're bound to laugh because that's fair. And when for example, in a boardroom, you're sitting and making a presentation. You're always looking at the chief honcho who's sitting over there to see in his eyes whether there is an approval. Okay, so that is how we operate, and that culture has to change. Unless that culture changes, whatever we are talking about is
that's the colonization mindset. Jawad, that's the colonization mindset, which we
not only colonization. I would not blame this only on colonization. It's also
social structure, the social part.
Our social structure. Okay, our social structure has been like that for eons together, for centuries. The British came much later, but we have been like that for centuries. So we have always been deferential to authority. So as Uma pointed out, somewhere along the line, we always believe that there should be the chapa, the stamp of approval of somebody in authority to say that this is right. And we accept it, no matter how badly it affects us or how much we may disagree with that.
Let me tell you that this is not an Indian situation. This is a global session. If you go back to one of my meetings, it's on my YouTube, there's on my website as the index of the YouTube. There's one meeting that we had last year. I asked everyone about this whole concept of why mediation has not taken off globally. And this aspect came up, that people want someone else to take the decision for them. One is, of course, they want that approval part of it. The other is actually they want to leave the decision to someone else. They don't want to take the decision.
So that is clear. That is clear. But we also have to remember that there is a difference between the two societies. If you take the Western and Eastern society, the Western society is a cold context where it's a high context society. It's a low context society. So Rahim Shamji explained this very well. He said that in those cold countries, when we were, hunters and gatherers, we used to sit around the fire. And you had to form smaller groups because it was very cold. And the fire would not really last man. So therefore, you had to form smaller groups. Therefore, you have this concept of nuclear families and decision making, which is more horizontal. Whereas in hot culture, in high context cultures, like for example the Eastern countries, where we come from, the heat is quite a lot, so we don't really need the fire. Where everybody used to sit together, and that is where the hierarchies started forming. Okay, so the hierarchies are so entrenched in our society, whichever society, for them, it might be the fear of taking responsibility. It may happen to a few people, it may not happen to others, but it is easier for them to move out of that hierarchy. It's easier for them to challenge the hierarchy. Whereas for us, it is very difficult because it's imbibed in us. You cannot question so-and-so because the so-and-so is a person in authority, whatever the designation might be. Boss is always right. The king can make no mistakes. So this is the kind of culture that we are used to.
Well, but I'm saying that no, but I won't. Let's not miss out on that little thing that you said about being appointed by the court and them not coming to a private thing. It's a big issue because Jeff. I told you about Jeff Kitchabin in the last symposium. He, of course, practices as a senior mediator. He had the same issue with the court system. This was exactly what was happening with him. That is why it's not something that is as simple as what you just said. Is actually going to be the pathway, and
Correct.
that is what is something which will not help mediators and actually won't help mediation also, because again I keep with the people from the US, we of course talking to them,
and also, sorry to interrupt you, not help the courts also.
Yeah. The courts, they for them, I'm telling you, they won't help the court only because of the fact that the numbers that will come into the court we can't handle. That's why it won't help the court. And of course, I have lots of other aspects which I will pick up. But the main thing is that pathway, we should not let it happen, because this is just a step towards that. And of course, Anis is going to give you a firing for sitting on this for so long on your anniversary.
No, I really have to go because the family is waiting for lunch.
Exactly. No, you have to. This is important discussion. What we'll do is we'll do part 2. We'll do part 2 later, because Mr. Panchu also, we can bring him in for more discussion. So I think there is lots to discuss. Yes, Umaji, lots to discuss.
Very true.
Yeah. So let's do part 2 in the conference itself. So maybe we can just end it here. I can understand Jawad's situation, and I don't want Anis to abuse me. I don't want that.
I don't want you to mediate.
That is another thing. So thank you very much. And obviously, lovely talking to both of you. And we'll take this up. Maybe we will fix a time separately off the live thing.
Sure. Thank you, Uma.